Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds post-game live. I'm Geoff Mosher with Adam Caplan. Congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles. They have won the NFC East 2024. It is their second NFC East championship in 3 years. And Adam, they do it by trouncing the Cowboys at the Linc on Sunday, 41-7. Two different backup quarterbacks have to play, but the defense sets the ball early with 3 turnovers and a touchdown. Saquon Barkley takes over late. And then what you have is a very workmanlike Philadelphia Eagles trouncing of the Cowboys. And I know for the fans, Adam, there's nothing better than the Eagles reaching the division at the hands of the Dallas.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. I mean, growing up here, man, it's just I can't imagine like if you were at the Linc and you could just point at the Cowboys and say, ha ha. But here's the crazy thing about this game, where there's a lot to unpack here. Mm-hmm. The Eagles wound up scoring the final 34 points. Okay, the game was close early. In fact, the Cowboys out first down the Eagles 8-0 in the first quarter for a majority of the first quarter. And I was like, okay, this is not going to last. There's no way this is going to last. But Kenny Pickett re-injures his ribs, plays fairly well, by the way, before he got hurt. The new cold hero, Tanner McKee, got the job done with his touchdown pass. So that was eventful. A lot of the McKeeites love that.
Yep.
But you know what record still stands tall in the NFC East? We haven't had a repeat winner since 2004.
I was going to make a joke that the Eagles clinching today all but assures that they will not win the division in 2025. But I don't want to – no negative vibes. The Eagles are the champs. I don't want to be accused of negativity on a day like today. Great win and a great overcoming of some obstacles. Like you mentioned, you weren't playing with a full hand, obviously. No Jalen Hurts, and then Pickett with the ribs, and then he leaves, and McKee comes in. And as you brought up, and I laughed a little bit. Like, you have to laugh at some of the graphics that the TV people put up. At one point, because Dallas was moving the ball well in the first quarter, on their way to the first touchdown, Fox puts up a graphic that the Cowboys had outgained the Eagles 100 yards to nothing. Kind of have to have an offensive possession to have a yard. So if you're acting like the Eagles are doing something wrong offensively, they were not. But it did feel like the Eagles needed to settle in, Adam, and just let the Cowboys make their mistakes, which they did. And it starts with the fumble from it's really started with the throw to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He returned for a touchdown. But then they came and scored it and tied it, like you said. And then the fumble, and then another pick, and then later another fumble. The Cowboys were more than happy to oblige what the Eagles wanted. But give credit to the Eagles because they had to overcome their own obstacles, both offensively and then just getting back into a defensive rhythm, which they were able to do. And once they started to take control of the game, there was no looking back for them.
Oh yeah, because the Cowboys are so shorthanded. So just we talked about the overview of how the onslaught, the Eagles scored 31 straight. And how about this number? 9 turnovers recorded over the last 2 weeks for the defense. That's impressive.
Very.
It really is. And Gardner-Johnson had 2 picks. The first one was really impressive because you saw he read Cooper Rush's eyes. The second one was like, I hate to say you could have caught it, but just a bad overthrow by Cooper Rush. But the Gardner-Johnson's coming on here. You know he could do it. He's got this knack. He tracks the ball extremely well, and you saw that. And they recorded more fumbles. That's pretty impressive. So that's a feel-good story for the defense. And overall, when you're plus territory like they are in terms of the defense is given over to the offense on a shorter field, but that quarterbacks and running backs and wide receivers love that because you get such an advantage. You're backing the defense up, and the offense took advantage of it. Good for them. And I do want to give Kellen more credit because I said on our pregame show. I know Greg Cosell didn't totally agree with me. We were both right. I know what he meant. He said the offense has to start with Barkley. It did, but they didn't have success early. And what I also said is they have to go after Andrew Booth, which they did.
You did.
He's the corner who was filling in for yet another corner, Amani Owarie, who was put on IR on Saturday. Andrew Booth was just cut. He was cut prior to the season by the Vikings, a former second rounder who they didn't even want. Think about that. And they had nobody left at corner. They were down 3 corners. So you got to throw the football. Unlike last week when Pickett came off the bench, they wouldn't let him throw it. They were hiding him. They were not hiding him in this game. They let him throw it. He had the obligatory crazy play. We were like, what the hell was that? the ball that came out of his hands. Like we're not. Like, what was that? What just happened?
Yeah.
But
thank God the replay showed that the
Yeah.
linebacker Marist, I can't pronounce his last name, was able to get his hand on it, because from one angle it just looked like he did the whole like sticky, the ball is sticking to my hand and then all
exactly
out thing. Yeah. So I agree with you. Yeah, they needed to throw the ball early and get that just a couple, right? They just needed to get Dallas on its toes a little bit. And then, as we've seen in nearly every single game this year, once you do that, once you get a few points on the board, once you loosen up the D, then it becomes Saquon Barkley time. And Adam, Saquon Barkley has another monster game. He finishes with 167 rushing yards, averages 5.4 yards per carry, and he is now for the season, and this provokes a conversation, he's at 2,005 total rushing yards. And of course, the record for single season rushing yards by Eric Dickerson is 2,105. So he is 100 yards away. So I ask you, Adam Caplan, with us really not knowing what's going to happen in these afternoon games, and of course the Lions play Monday night, if the Eagles are locked into the number 2 seed and they can't get the number 1 seed, do you put Saquon Barkley out there next week?
No, absolutely not. No,
I would agree with you. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, unless there's one way I would do it. If it happened to be, it doesn't matter now, it's a moot point. But had he been, let's say, 25 yards or less, again, it's an arbitrary number, where you could just you think you could play him 1 or 2 series and get him out.
Mm-hmm.
But the risk is just not worth the reward, because if you don't have him, you're not winning a Super Bowl, period, end of story. You're just not.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really take that risk. I know the lineman would pull forward. I mean, to be able to block for a season like this, which is historic, it's pretty damn cool, by the way. It's cool to see the sidelines. As Fox was showing the sideline in the fourth quarter when Saquon was really rolling it up like every game, just rolling up those yards. It's really incredible. Like, they put up the graphic of first half of games yardage and second half. It's one of the most remarkable stories that you've seen. And credit obviously to Geoff Stoutland, who also designs the run game, and Jamal Singleton, the run backs coach, is terrific. Those two guys have to partner up on this thing. It's not, you can't do it alone. I mean, it takes a village, as they say, to get things done. And it's a pretty cool story. But overall, as we get started with the offense, I like, again, that they weren't just going to say, okay, we know Dallas is bad. They've had problems stopping the run for the most part. Let's just run the ball and not let Pickett throw. They didn't do that. I like that they actually came out mixing it up a bit.
Yeah, and just to get back to Barkley, I agree with you. I feel like them pulling Saquon with 10 minutes left in this game, instead of trying to get more yards and get him at least closer, probably reveals that they're not going to play him next week. Because if you were going to jeopardize his health next week in a game that might not mean anything, why wouldn't you just keep going for it in this game itself? So, and I bet you Saquon probably had some input into it. And we know that he is not a record chaser. We saw that earlier in the year when he didn't go for the single game record, right? And he said, let the other guys eat. So I agree with you on that. And I like what we saw from Tanner McKee coming in. That's not an easy situation. His first pass was a little bit behind Smith, and then he got a little warm and got the touchdown. I think the same thing for Kenny Pickett. I thought Kenny Pickett's ball placement, as we get into the offense here, early on was not very good. And he seemed a little bit scattershot in the pocket. Even that play to Grant Calcaterra, where Calcaterra made a really nice one-handed grab.
Incredible.
I thought he left the pocket a little early because the pressure wasn't as bad as maybe he seemed to make it seem. But I will give him credit. He threw that ball on the run in a place where only Calcaterra was going to get it, and Calcaterra made an amazing play. But yes, they saw a matchup that they felt like they needed to exploit in the passing game to open up the running game, and that was, as you mentioned, going up against Andrew Booth. I think you even had said in the pregame show that you expected Devontae to be the one to have the bigger game because you figured Bland would probably be more so on A.J. Brown. Although I think on the first touchdown, I think that was Booth, right? That got
25 is Booth.
Yeah, it's tough because one's 25, there's 26. So sometimes it's hard to catch the number. But yeah, that was a good foresight on your part. And that's really all it took. I think this showed the quarterback didn't need to be perfect, neither of them. They've got enough weapons. They got an offensive line. They got Barkley. You just have to be able to take advantage of those one-on-one opportunities. And conversely, you know what? Cooper Rush had a few of them. His receivers had a few of them, and they missed. Like when Mingo, either stopped his route or he had Mitchell beat there on that third possession. And when they couldn't connect, that was a really bad missed opportunity for the Cowboys that the Eagles were able offensively to capitalize on when they had their opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of those situations where when they got protection, they actually had pretty decent protection. The Eagles only had one sack. And you never really felt like, oh, wow, it was a barrage of great rushes and so forth. In fact, they got caught on a blitz in the first quarter. Rush actually got them pretty good. I think it was to Brandon Cooks on the right sideline. Cooks had that. He came very close to scoring. Tolbert was the one who scored. Tolbert scored in 2 straight weeks. But finishing off offense here, it's not easy to come off the bench and give Tanner McKee credit. In fact, he had the one A.J. Brown was called back due to the hold, and then they wound up scoring anyway. But that was an impressive throw for the touchdown overall. That was really good. I thought Pickett made some good throws in the game. Yes, he had a couple. His first pass was terrible. Short area, throws it over A.J. Brown's head. I'm like, oh boy, he's just got to get the kinks out, right?
Yeah, I mean, the one that really bothered me was the sort of the flare pass to Barkley that was behind him, and you could get a guy hurt like that when he's got to turn around to catch the ball, and you got defenders coming at you. So I'm glad he was able to straighten some things out. But yeah, he just needed a few good ones to get back into a rhythm.
Yeah, got into a rhythm. Exactly right. And it wasn't the thing is that talking to coaches over the years, it's when you get up big, man, it's really hard to keep it coming. And what happened was it's just that Barkley started going off. They kept feeding him. And then you kept saying 8, 10, 12-yard chunks, which he wasn't getting the first half. It started happening in the third, and then in the fourth quarter, it was over. So, overall, impressive. I just felt this was a good Kellen Moore game because it's not easy to call a game for backup quarterbacks. Oh, and Jay Glazer had a great point. I didn't know this. This is interesting. Glazer put out on Fox pregame on Friday's practice because of Pickett's ribs. They got McKee first-team reps. They actually split the reps because, obviously, if Pickett got hurt, and he did, he re-injured his ribs, they wanted to make sure McKee worked with the ones, with Smith and Brown in particular. So goodbye, Sirianni. That was a Sirianni call. It's a smart call. We know about the developmental period afterwards. I know for a fact that happened earlier in the week where Pickett in particular got work after practice. I don't know how long they did it, but nevertheless, that's good that they did it in Friday's practice. And you know what? It showed today. I mean, I know he's well blocked. I mean, I know that they blocked very well for McKee. He just looks like a statue back there and goes. Yep. It was a good throw, great protection, and by the way, good for the offensive line to bounce back. It was by far the worst game of the season against Washington last week.
Agreed. Nice bounce back. Also thought the tight ends seemed to do their job as well in the blocking part. And the Eagles came out. Obviously, they knew Dallas was going to sell out against the run. The Eagles came out. They didn't. It's not like they tried to spread out the Cowboys like 3 weeks ago when they played. I forget who they played. The Steelers, and were spread because we saw E.J. Jenkins out there. We saw Calcaterra out there. We saw Uzama out there. We saw Johnny Wilson lined up not only in condensed splits, so as sort of like a tight end trying to block, but also in a fullback formation. He was to the left of Pickett at least once and maybe a couple of times and got his momentum going as they continue to use him as a blocking wide receiver. And I'll have to check. I thought I saw Blasingame get in there on a couple. I may have been wrong, but either way.
You didn't. He's on
no, he didn't?
Yeah, no. Remember, in fact, the thing is that I don't understand why they did this. They used up all 3 of his elevations. Why would you do that?
That's right. For some reason, I thought he was on the I thought
47's Uzama. Yeah, 47's Uzama.
Yeah, I get those two confused. Yeah. That's what it was. But either way, the Eagles came out and they tried to play ground and pound, and they didn't spread it out a whole much. You did not see a lot of Jahan Dotson. You didn't see a whole lot of
did he play? Dotson, I didn't even see him.
Well, I mean, it was clear the Eagles were going to make it. They were going to either when they passed, they were going to do it out of condensed splits. They were going to do it out of 12 or tight 11s. They're going to play Wilson in there to sort of keep the Cowboys. Are they passing? Are they throwing? And after a little bit of a rough start, it worked. So I thought it was a good job.
Yeah. But by the way, you can throw out a 12 or condensed. That's the thing. It's like last week they didn't. This time they did, and they finally got it right. Because I was just flummoxed of what the hell they were trying to do last week. You can't coach scared. I get it that Pick was coming in cold. He hadn't played. But, man, I mean, just thought they played right into Washington's hands, and clearly the message was sent. We're not doing that. We're coming out from a coaching staff like they clearly had a plan to kind of go to mix up the run and pass. I just thought Kellen Moore really did a good job because last week I was I was very disappointed in Moore the way that he did it, and good for him to bounce back this week.
Yeah, definitely. By the way, coaching scared. I made a note that I was going to talk about this. Now it wound up not factoring at all because the Eagles blew him out. But second drive, you punt on 4th and 1 after you run on 3rd and 3. I was a little surprised. You think you're running there because you're going to, if you don't get it, you're going to go for it on 4th and 1. It was close enough to the middle of the field where I thought it was worth it. Again, I know people are concerned, and I think it's valid in a tight game against a good team. The way Nick sometimes goes for it, sometimes doesn't. Is he trusting his gut? Is he going with analytics? I mean, this would have been an area where I think you would have been okay to go for it, even if you don't get it, because you're at home. You're playing against a very underwhelming Dallas team that's got a lot of backups, but he punted there. It didn't come back to haunt them, but you just wonder in a bigger game, does he have a good feel for when he wants to go for it going into the game, or if he's just sort of going off like the feeling at the time?
Well, also if Hurts is back there, you're going for it. I mean, that's just, I don't think you even hesitate with Jalen Hurts back there in a situation like that. But
then pass on 3rd and 3 if you're not going to do it with Pickett. If you're not going to tush push with Pickett, then or only do it at the goal line when you're up.
It's so fun. It's just going to say like, okay, so they didn't go for the tush push as you just set that up at midfield or wherever the heck that was, and I'm thinking, okay, well, they're going to do it. Going to do it here with his bad ribs. They did it, and then I thought on the first blush on the first one that he got in, and then I guess somehow the hell they saw he didn't get in, and then they did it again and he got in. How about Kenny Gainwell pushing him and Johnny Wilson pushing him? But great job by those guys. They really did a good job, man. Thank goodness for the Eagles that they never outlawed that penalty, because it's so funny, all the stuff that I'd hear from other teams complaining about it when they first saw it. And then the other teams started trying to. The Giants did it. Somebody got hurt. Other teams are starting to do it. They can't do it like the Eagles. Isn't it comical? No one could do it like them. Why?
I mean, you got a quarterback who can squat 600. I mean, I don't know if that matters much, but I guess that maybe it is. I will say this. I was wrong about this last year. I think I eventually will be correct about this. Maybe not even this year, but eventually I believe the tush push will be outlawed by the NFL. I really believe it will eventually happen. Well, it could be 5 or 10 years from now, and I'll be able to say I'm right.
I told you 5 years ago.
I do think it's going to happen. Last thing, Adam, I want to talk about from an offensive standpoint, more of a big picture thing. I think the new playoff format that was implemented a couple of years ago with 7 teams now, and the second seed does no longer gets a bye, right? You have to play in the first round. I think that actually helps the Eagles in a way, because if Jalen Hurts was going to miss this game and then miss next guy, he's obviously not going to play next game if they're resting their starters, right?
Yep.
Then it would be yet another way. If they were the 2 seed, they would under the old format, they would have a bye. The first 2 seeds got a bye.
Correct. Yep.
So that would be 3 straight weeks. He would be off the field and then wouldn't be playing again until the divisional round against a team that's probably going to win 14 games in the NFC. I like the fact that he won't have to wait that long to get back on the field.
Well, he's getting basically 2 3/4 rest, and the way it's going to work out. But the good thing is he played last week, because I remember Andy Reid saying, it's one of these things I'll just never understand. The time when he put McNabb in for I think a play or 2 in a preseason. And he said he wanted to get him on grass. So I just rolled my eyes. I was just, get out of here.
Like, Andrew, there's plenty of grass at Lehigh.
Andy, I didn't ask many questions at the press conferences over the years, but when I did, it was for a specific purpose, because I was just curious about something I thought the fans would want to know. Like, why would you do that? Why would you take the risk? Well, he just had to touch grass. I'm like, get out of here. Whatever. Hey, the guy's the best coach in NFL history, so what do I know? But anyway, I thought, look, they scored 35 straight points. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. You like that the backup quarterbacks did a good job. You got to see Tanner McKee actually play. I know it was brief, but did a good job there. Barkley went off like we thought he might. It just took a while to do it. And I thought Kellen Moore called a good game. The offensive line rebounded nicely. You got to feel pretty good about it overall. And Smitty and AJ were great.
Hey, couldn't have asked for more. You just wanted to win. You would have taken it anyway. You would have gotten it. You would love for it to at least look somewhat pretty. And I think when you score 34 straight points, you can say it looked pretty. And then you can sort of add the feather in the cap that you had to do it with your 3rd string quarterback, who didn't just hand the ball off. I mean, he threw 2 passes. So great job there. All right, defensively, sort of a fascinating element of this game is that the Eagles produced 4 turnovers, right? You had 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries. You mentioned one of the interceptions was more bad overthrow, but good job by I mean, I don't know which Eagle Cooper Rush was trying to throw it to, whether it was TJ, Quinton Mitchell, or Reed Blankenship, but all three of those guys were in better position than the wide receiver. Nice play by Oren Burks to force a fumble and Jordan Davis kind of jumping on it. And I like the broadcast said, if there's going to be a scrum and Jordan Davis is in it, there's no way anybody else is going to get the football because it almost looked like Ferguson was going to get it back, but Jordan Davis came out with it. And then another forced fumble later in the game. I will say, though, it's almost surprising to see a team be able to create 4 turnovers without getting a ton of pressure. I wouldn't say the Eagles did a great job of getting pressure today, but they made opportunistic plays.
Yeah, a couple of things. Okay, let's get into it. So the first thing that surprised me is, if you notice, Jalen Carter early in the game was pulled, and they showed him on the sidelines. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was for discipline. Very odd. First quarter, the first 2 series, he was just standing there. I'm like, he doesn't look to be hurt. I don't know if he needed to catch his breath. I'm not sure.
You're right, because Moro Jomo, I noticed a Jomo in there quite a bit.
We're very odd. We were talking about this on Discord with our Patreon members. We couldn't figure it out. I don't know. I'm going to look into that one. Mm-hmm. So that's something that just to keep an eye on. Yeah, I didn't think they got enough pressure on Cooper Rush, but when they did, it was very effective. I would say that. Other than that, the time they blitzed, they didn't get home and they got beat. I think what happens sometimes is you got to feel the game out and see what they're trying to do to you. The other part that was a little troubling, the run defense was very spotty. Let's forget about the yardage, the garbage yards that Dowdle put up late. Turpin got him on which we noted in the pregame that's coming, that they were going to use him in the backfield. They did. And he had a real nice run up the middle. In fact, that was when Cooper DeJean, he bounced off the grass or the turf, whatever you want to call it. We believe it's real grass. But anyway, he bounced off the grass. And then I think DeJean didn't notice that he hit the ground or something. So he took him to the ground again, and Turpin took exception to it. But there were some runs that they gave him. I thought their run defense was a little leaky in the first quarter. Then it got better. I'm not worried about the pass rush. We kind of knew that it's one of these situations that you have certain guys who could rush the passer. Nolan Smith, who improved greatly. Sweaty did. Also the selective blitzing. By the way, Nakobe Dean didn't play today. He's a good blitzer. Can't forget about that. And also Dean not playing, I think, hurt their run defense. In fact, I know it did. That was part of it. So if you add it all up, there are certain things that were different. And remember, Zach Bond, as our Andrew DeCecco noted, was wearing the green dot today. Burke started for him. Mm-hmm. So there were just some things they had to clean up a little bit. That was the one. Really, honestly, the only negative in this game was, to me, the run defense. And they gave up some pass plays early. Then they started getting after it. Then they shut Cooper Rush down. Then he looked like the Cooper Rush for the most part in the first game, where he was horrendous.
Why wouldn't you be somewhat? I guess you're right. I'm not extra concerned, but I mean, 2 straight weeks of not having a great pass rush. We know that this is not an area that's very deep. Bryce Huff came back, but then he got hurt again. I would say that I have a concern in this when they do play in the playoffs, whether it's Washington. It looks like it's gonna be Washington, right? At this point, yeah. I would say I have a little concern that they just don't have an animal out there who's going to get 2.5, 3 sacks. And, the defense has been great. So it's not like it's a major concern. It's just the same one we probably talked about all year long, is when you get into the playoffs and the offensive line play gets better and the quarterback play gets better, are you going to be able to, rush the passer with a 4-man rush? Because you don't want to start blitzing in the playoffs against anyone that you play. You want to be able to get, you want to have coverage.
He doesn't want to do it. No, you just hit on it. Vic wants to do 4. As Vic said, when you can't win with 4, you have to bring 5, which he did last week, and it didn't go very well against Jay Daniels. It was terrible. So yeah, you're right, and that obviously is their number one issue on defense going forward the next season, which will be addressed significantly. Will be their pass rush. It's at times overachieved. They don't, as you said, they don't have that A-level pass rusher, but you love that Nolan Smith has gotten better. Sweat's really bounced back this season. And Jalix Hunt's shown a little bit. He's okay. He left the game briefly and came back. Gardner Johnson, which you just mentioned on the injury. Now, he grabbed his ankle Achilles area. Thankfully, as you saw on the sidelines, he was whooping it up with his teammates, laughing and stuff. That was good because he went to the tent. I slowed it down a bunch of times. And what happened is he bent his ankle back, and that's when you could see him writhing in pain. But if anyone has ever sprained their ankle, that happens sometimes, and it's not, I wouldn't call it spasm. You could bend it back and initially it hurts like hell. And then you go, oh, wow, okay, it's just sore. So obviously you don't expect to see him play next week. So they just get him right for the playoffs. And anyone else get hurt? We know about Pickett re-injuring the ribs. Anyone else?
I mean, Huff went out, but he came back
back late.
He came back. We'll have to see.
Back late. Yeah, shoulder. It's a shoulder. This one's a new one. Jeez.
Becton, did something happen to Becton?
He did. He left briefly and came back. Saw big 77 come back. Yeah. So that's
the Eagles are the kings of this, by the way. They got guys who leave and come back every single, whether it's Dickerson, whether it's Becton, whether it's CJ, GJ, happens all the time.
They do. It's Dickerson's the king. He should wear like the crown if they ever gave guys who leave the game and come back, leave game to come back. He's the king since he was drafted.
Yeah.
I would say that. So we'll have to. And look, Ian Book. We put some notes on Patreon this morning, and one of the notes that I put up was that because it seemed bizarre, why in the world would they sign Ian Book off the practice squad and not elevate him? Because the elevations reset anyway. I mean, they don't count. There's no elevate. You don't have to worry about elevating in the playoffs. They don't. There's no limit. It's because, believe this or not, you could poach someone off a practice squad before the playoffs. And
also, didn't it allow them to elevate, because you're only allowed a certain number of elevations. They needed to elevate Gant, and they needed to elevate who was the other guy they elevated from the practice squad? Where were they hurting? Oh, Ty Davis Price.
Yes.
Right. And they needed those two guys. So I think that's why they had to sign Book, because they also needed an emergency QB.
Well, yeah, they had to have. Book had to be on the roster. They one way. I'm just saying.
Why he couldn't be. Yeah, but they couldn't elevate him from the practice squad and then also elevate the other two. So they had to make a decision.
Gant. What happened with Gant was he was the fourth inside backer. You needed to have four.
Yep.
So it's funny. They need to have four inside backers, but they also had to have an extra quarterback. So one way or the other, someone was going to get elevated, someone's going to get signed. Mm-hmm. But Book, the other part about it is Book almost certainly is going to play next week. It should be.
I was wondering. You think McKee doesn't get a game, or you go half and half, McKee and Book?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's to me, it's a preseason game with, unfortunately, because you only have a certain amount of 40. You only have 46 spots, on your game day roster, plus any elevations that you basically have to play some starters. You can't. It's just the way it is.
Right.
But I absolutely. I in fact, what's going to happen. What's going to happen? McKee's going to light it up against the Giants next week, who are horrendous, NFL's worst team. Oh, by the way, they won today.
Neighbors went crazy today. Yeah, Drew Lock, Eagles nemesis, Drew Lock.
Yes, well, and good for people in fantasy championships, 7 for 171 and 2. But for a team that really wants to get that first pick overall, they're battling the Raiders. And how about the Raiders winning, huh?
How about it? See, I want everybody to understand who's watching this, right? That people are going to criticize these teams and they're going to say they're stupid, they should be tanking, but players don't tank in the NFL. Coaches don't tank. They don't know how to. You have to start players. You can't start 22 backups because you don't have 22 backups. I know fans have a tough time understanding it. I know all they want is first round picks. I think the NBA and their tanking has ruined it for other sports leagues, but it's really, really hard to tank and almost impossible. And players themselves don't go out there and put their bodies at a risk and paychecks at a risk to try and lose. And as somebody in our comment section, yes, the Eagles know about this because of a couple of years ago. But yeah, like it's I mean, the Eagles tried to tank a couple of years ago, right?
They claim they did. Okay. So Doug, the word that was then that Peterson screwed up the quarterback plan. I'm not going to go into it deeper, but that's 4 years ago. But
it's not like they lost that game by 30. Like they very easily could have won that game. It's just hard. It just doesn't happen the way people.
No, well, coaches now, but I would say front offices don't always think like coaches because they
100%.
As you know, coaches are trying to save their jobs. They don't care. They want to win. Even when they suck, they hold on to some hope by winning like the last two games. Maybe they'll keep their jobs. Where like front officers are like, hey, we like these guys personally, but guess what? We want the higher draft pick. But they'll never say that publicly, obviously.
Exactly. I agree with you 100% on that. So, okay, I was really curious to hear if you thought McKee would get the entire keys to the car next week or if Book would also get in there. So I can understand both situations. Just get them both some action and get out and then get ready for the playoffs.
I mean, it could be McKee the whole game. But honestly, if you go back, when was the Book here? 2 years ago?
It was 2 years ago, and then last year in camp, but he got
McKee
cut.
beat him out.
He got beat out by McKee. Yeah.
So the word around the club was that they thought Ian Book fit their offense well.
Right.
Pretty good athlete, really smart kid, good for the quarterback room. They were going to try to groom him as a backup quarterback, oversee, because they didn't know much about McKee. McKee didn't really fit. He's just not, in terms of athleticism, he's just not a good athlete. So anyway, McKee obviously had a great preseason, very so-so training camp, but great preseason where the Eagles knew they couldn't stick him through waivers. There's no way when you put tape out there like that. We're talking about 2023, and Ian Book looked bad, so the decision was easy. They didn't have to think about it. And then Book, it was weird. Like Book was with the Chiefs in the preseason, they cut him, and no one else signed him.
Right.
Until now.
No. All right. Hey, Eagles win again. 13 wins, Adam. It's no doubt we should give a little bit. We don't probably do it enough on the show. You do it more than I do, but we got to give Nick Sirianni some credit for this. Yeah. He was under fire a lot in not only the first 4 weeks, but even in some wins, like the Jacksonville win where it got close at the end and he made some curious game day decisions, which were all fair criticisms, but the guy wins. He's been winning, and they're doing a great job. I know it's already been out there and discussed. What happens if the Eagles lose in the first round? Does it get fired? I can't even believe that is now even a question or a topic. Like that's sort of like, why don't we cross that bridge when we get there? Like today didn't seem like the day, or yesterday, to have to discuss that. But that's always the stuff that follows the Eagles anyway.
I would say this was by the way, he's 47-20 in the regular season. I would say this was Sirianni. Down the road, we're not this year, obviously, because they made the playoffs again. They won the division, for goodness sake. Even if they get handled in the first round, most likely against Washington. One of the things that Jeffrey Lurie prides himself in is being different and being thoughtful and not overreacting. Doesn't mean he doesn't get mad or have temper over stuff like any human being would be. When you obviously after they lost to Tampa and they were not competitive in the playoffs, he wasn't happy. We know that. Everybody knows that. But just down the line, we're talking about years 5, 6, or 7. Yeah, if he has 2 years where it looks really bad, where it's obvious he's got to be in the hot seat, it'll be obvious to everyone. It won't just be from an ownership stand, but everyone will know if they're not prepared. Well, this team is prepared every week, and quite frankly, let's call it like it is. They've overachieved. This roster is not as good as 22's. I'm not the only one who thinks that. You're not the only one who thinks that. We've talked to a bunch of people around the league who've told us that privately. We've asked. And they think the coaching has been supreme here, particularly on defense. Mm-hmm. Vic Fangio and his group, you're not going to be perfect every week. Washington was not one of their best weeks, but they bounced back. Vic's phenomenal. For those people who thought he's washed up, I mean, you want to think again about that? Guy's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, the coaching's been great. I think defensively correct. Offensively, I think they're as good, if not better, just because of Saquon Barkley. Everybody else is pretty much right at the same level or the same guy.
Yeah, I'm just talking about coaching, though. Yeah,
coaching, not even a question. In fact, I think Vic Fangio should probably be a candidate for assistant coach of the year. I don't know if he'll get it. Some other guys have done a great job as well. But
do we vote for that in Pro Football Writers? I can't remember.
We do on Pro Football Writers.
He's I don't know who. I mean, Ben Johnson is the default one, but I'm thinking.
Didn't he win it last year, though? I mean, it's hard to.
Might have, yeah. Jesse Minter. You know how cool that is? Rick Minter's coaching on the staff. Rick was a former linebackers coach, or was he? Whatever he was with Chip Kelly here.
Yep.
He's coached for his son Jesse. He was the defense coordinator for the Chargers. But there've been some great coaching. And also Stout, by the way, we got to mention Stout.
That's a great one. I wonder if there'll be a day when the assistant coach of the year doesn't go to a coordinator but a position coach. That'll be an interesting one. And as we just wrap this up, I would think because we're going to start to see some hiring cycle stuff soon. Mm-hmm. I think the only guy the Eagles may have to worry about just getting interviewed might be Christian Parker, who has done an excellent job as a defensive back coach. Maybe a little bit too early for him, but maybe he'll get some defensive coordinator type looks, or maybe he'll just get that first round of interviews as people try to kick the tires on guys who are on the rise. But he's done an excellent job this year. You can't put into words what he's been able to do with his defensive backfield. It's a young one.
Joe Casper, the safeties coach. Yep. He's really good. And Bobby King, the ILB's coach. You got to be kidding me with Zach Bond. Mm-hmm. I mean, came out of nowhere. One of the most amazing. I would have to say the most unlikely story: Sam Darnold number 1, Zach Bond number 2. I didn't think Sam Darnold had a chance. He's never been good.
Right.
And he's one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League this season. He is the reason why they're 13-2. He's the number one reason. And then you look at Zach Bond. I mean, you got to be making this up. There's just no way. I know Vic Fangio said he saw something in tape that showed him he could play inside backer. The Eagles didn't sign him to be a pure inside backer. It's just crazy.
It was crazy. All right. So we'll have a lot of content on the platform this week. Of course, we'll have Q&A and we'll have Gun on One. We should. And then we'll have Andrew and his podcast. And hopefully Will Shipley will clear some concussion protocol. Maybe we can get the rookie diary back for this week. And of course, Inside the Birds our podcast will be up, and Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell.
Oh, tomorrow night, Patreon at 7:30 Eastern. Yes.
Ask Greg Cosell. That's right. 7:30. Yeah. All right. That is going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds Post Game Live. For Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. And of course, we thank you for watching. We'll catch you next week.